with infrastructure projects and construction projects halted, supply chain disrupted due to the pandemic. What has been the biggest impact of COVID-19 on the manufacturing sector?
So if you look at it, while there are obviously due to the lockdown that has happened over the last couple of months, there is a slowdown in terms of how fast you can operate your supply chain, how many construction activities happen, how
Correct.
the manufacturing plants can operate. So overall, there is a period when definitely many of manufacturing plants as well as construction products had to be slowed down or shut down. But now, as we start to see in Unlock 1.0, many of those have started to come back, and I think India is on a path to rebound back as fast as it had to go down in a slowdown mode.
And you've responded to the crisis by changing your supply chain focus and product expertise to provide PPEs and medical and sanitizing equipment. So tell me more about the kind of pivot you've really made.
So I think it is more of an extension, because if you look at it, we have always been into 40 plus categories, and safety being one of the large ones. With the COVID coming in, it was clear that safety will become paramount, and not just for the category that we have to support in our supply chain, but also for the health and safety reasons of the entire country. And I think we were fortunate because beyond 1 week, our supply chains have been operating and therefore supporting the supplies of many of these essential safety products across the gamut of manufacturing as well as the medical fraternity.
But, I really want to understand that, while you spoke about the kind of challenges that the sector is undergoing because of COVID-19, but are you also feeling that, a lot of startups and MSMEs are facing now cash flow challenges? Is that one of the biggest challenge that the ecosystem is facing currently?
So definitely MSMEs do have a challenge. I think more than 60 to 70% of the MSMEs would be facing some kind of a cash crunch challenge, both in terms of working capital as well as their ability to pay salaries when they are working at a lower capacity than their typical production design. So there is definitely a short period when they have to go through that pain. And hopefully, we expect that quite a few of them should survive and thrive as we continue forward.
All right. Now, Rahul, with the lockdown now eased in various phases and businesses opening, what has been your approach? How do you plan to deal with the new normal?
So I think for us, since the beginning, it was clear that this is not going to be a short-term fight. I mean, this is a long fight because vaccine is, while there are a lot of trials happening, it's not going to happen in a month or so. So what we have done is, one, as a company, how do we build an effective model of working from home with some reduced capacity that we have opened offices across the country? The second element is continue to make sure that our supply chain is working with full capacity, because obviously there are still areas where you would have some friction, either in movement of goods or in terms of the products that may be available from the suppliers. So what we have been able to do in the last 3 months is establish a mechanism that we can continue to do this in an effective manner. And many of the Moglix have basically stepped up in this time to adapt to this change.
Okay. Rahul, it's interesting, but you're also eyeing global shores. Now, Moglix launched its UK operations in November last year, and you're now eyeing other countries in Europe as well. What is making you expand to these corona hotbeds? Tell me the kind of business traction also that you're trying to generate, especially in these times.
So I think there is always a saying, right? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So to some extent, we believe that as this corona pandemic happens, global supply chains will get reconfigured. And we do believe that India and some of the other emerging countries would be beneficiaries of these changes that will happen macro. And I think we can play an important role as a distribution partner, both for some of the Indian manufacturers to supply products to these countries, as well as for many of these countries who are looking at now de-risking themselves of high coupling with one or two countries from their supply chain perspective. So we think that this is a time you can actually establish those lanes. And as the next few years pan out, you can continue to strengthen those ties and changes which are happening.
Okay, so like I mentioned that November 2019 is when you launched your UK operations, and now you're eyeing other countries in Europe. Tell me the business traction, the numbers, and the interest that you're looking to receive, and what has been the impact there? What is the kind of trends or the traction you're seeing there?
We are working with more than 20 very, very large organizations on how they think about their supply chain of the future. Many of them looking at us for their medical supplies, personal protection, but many of them also thinking about how broad-based MRO can be supported from the country. So these are things which will take time to establish, but that is a journey that many of them have embarked on during these crisis times.
Now, speaking about horizons, before I let you go, I believe you aspire to impact more than $100 billion of Indian manufacturing industry. Are you on track to achieve this, and how soon do you see this happening?
So we today work with manufacturing companies which are north of $10 billion of annual output for them already. So we believe over the next 3 years, pretty much all manufacturing companies in India should be working with Moglix, either as an efficient procurement supply chain partner for them or for their sales and distribution. And we are pretty much on track for that. And now the horizon is expanded not just to India, but to the rest of the world as well.
Okay, speaking about rest of the world, what are the other countries that you're eyeing and you're looking to set up operations, and how soon?
Early days, I think as we go through the rest of the chaotic year, we will come back with what are the countries we are going to launch. So you'll have to remain tuned in for it.